Alright guys, so now that you've heard that, let's get started on making that tune. The first thing you want to do is go to the description and download the pack that I have for you guys there. That will include all of the samples, presets, and also one of the channel presets for the vocodecs. You're going to want to download that because that will be used for this entire tutorial. Once you've downloaded it, just put it in any folder on your desktop or whatever. Just make sure that you can access it from your quick fast browser here. Once you load up FL Studio, go ahead and bring your BPM down to 126 BPM. And we're also going to load in our first Synth 1, so we're going to bring that one up. Once we've loaded that up, the first thing we do is go to Menu, Preset, Load, and we're going to find the first Future Bounce 1 Jarno preset, and we're going to load that one on up. You should be able to find that wherever you put the folder on your computer. It's underneath the Synth 1 samples folder within the download. So bring that up, and that sounds a bit like this. Okay, so the first thing we do is we take this relatively simple synth sound and we're going to build a melody out of it. Now I'm going to have a play here and see what I can come up with. So give me a couple minutes, I'll be right back. Okay, so if you do want to load up the score that I have made for this, it'd be best if you design your own because then you have your own unique piece. But if you just go click on Open Score, and then you just find the Future Bounce tutorial lead if you're selecting the lead, and then the bass if you're selecting the bass, and then you'll load up the scores for that. So just find that in the folder that you download. It'll be underneath MIDI scores, and you just click on it, click open, and then that will load up there for you. Alright guys, so I've come up with a lead here. It's a little bit busy and things are going on, but basically this synth is got a portamento on each note. So any overlapping of notes will mean that it will trail down in a bending fashion depending on the time which I've got on this preset. So as an example, see how that sort of blends down? We'll just drop that an octave there. So we've got this. Whereas if they were set apart, you sound like this. But we want to create the bend of the pitch there. Pretty straightforward. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up another 4 instances of Synth 1, and each of them we're going to open up the respective presets. So let me go ahead and do that. We're just going to insert Synth 1, and as soon as we load that one up, we're going to go to Menu, Preset, Load, and we're going to find our second one there, and we're going to open that up. That sounds like this. And we're just going to copy and paste the exact same lead because we're starting to make layers now. And we're going to repeat this process for the rest of the presets that I have for you guys. So open up a new Synth 1 preset, load, and then we're going to select the third one, pop that one in, copy and paste the same lead. We're going to move these around a little bit as we go, but for now, let's just drop them in the same. Again, insert Synth 1. We're going to bring up the menu, preset, load, go number 4, open, and then of course finally we're going to do the 5th one, menu, preset, load, and we'll bring in our 5th Future Bounce lead. Okay, we're going to copy across each of these, and now we're going to mess around with a bit of octave play, see what we can come up with. Let's see what we've got here. So the sounds we've got going on here are individual. This is the ones we've got. So these 4, the bottom 2 and the top 2, are essentially our main lead sounds, whereas this one here is going to be used as an effect layer. So basically we want to decide which of these we're going to stereo. Now for this particular sound, we're actually going to focus on stereoing all of these layers as wide as possible, because for this particular type of sound, it needs to be completely full in order for it to sound good and for it to sound like a complete track when we get to the end of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 of the leads at the bottom here, which have very similar noise in some capacity. So those 2. If you press the Shift key, you can select 2 at the same time. We're going to go to our mixer here. We'll go insert 10 and then Control L to link that one on in. We're going to repeat the same for the top 2. Right next to it, we'll drop it in. And then finally we'll grab the third one, which is a little spike, and we'll drop that into our 12th insert there. Just like so. So if we solo these out, next one, and finally, a little bit different. So first thing we'll do here is we'll drop the volume of all of these because it is really loud. So we'll drop this down. Let's go to, say, about 60% roughly for now, and we'll adjust them accordingly. So when I start any track, basically, my first or my main sounds, I don't want it to peak anywhere above negative 12 decibels, so just watch that rating there. Okay, so now that's loaded up, we can start with a few of the effects. You can already sort of hear that the sounds blend together quite nicely, but we really want to fatten this up a little bit. So we'll go to our first preset here. Now I have got a plugin which I'm going to use in this tutorial, which you would have to download. It's a Waves plugin, it's called 222, and I use it in basically every song that I've made in the past half year. Fantastic plugin. If you're going to buy one, that is amazing for your stereo. If you've just got your regular FL versions, then you'll have to go with the Fruity Stereo Shaper and just use one of the stereo presets in there, which is under Stereoize, probably number 2. Oh, let's bring up a different sound. So that sounds reasonably stereoed. If you've got headphones on, you'll be able to pick this up. Listen carefully. This is with, without, with, without. You can notice that the sound sounds like it's on each left and right hand side of your ears rather than in front of you. And that's what we want to go for. But I'm going to go ahead and just use the Fruity Stereo Shaper, but I highly recommend purchasing that 222 plugin because it's absolutely fantastic and there's a lot more tweaks you can do. We're going to add this to all 3 of these plugins. So we'll go ahead and bring up another Fruity Stereo Shaper, and we're going to select our preset, of course, which is number 2, which is for these sounds. So that sounds nice and wide. And then finally for our final sound, which is the little pluck here. Actually, I think we can leave that and maybe we can mess with it a little bit later on. So what we'll do now is we'll start blending these sounds together. So one thing I want to do is once we have the little spike here, we're going to do the effects on this one. So the preset we're going to load up, or the plugin we're going to load up, is Fruity Delay 3. If you don't have that, you can use any other delay plugin, but I would advise you to give this one a go. So the first thing that I'm going to do with this is I'm going to put the input for the wet at about 80%. You can sort of use your scroll wheel to adjust the values perfectly, and you can see all of the values up in the top left here. We're also going to go to our dry, and we're going to drop that all the way to 0. So now if we have a listen just for starters, it's only delay. So you won't hear the initial sound. It'll sound like it's delayed off completely. That's because the original sound is not there. The time we're going to adjust to is 3. The offset, we're going to go either right all the way completely left. I usually just go right. Select ping pong. If we hit it now, you'll notice that it jumps from left to right. On your headphones, if you're listening carefully, you can catch that. And we're going to bring our feedback level down quite a bit. So I'd say about 30%, and we'll have another listen. So that sounds quite nice. This is just a little effect that we can add for our sound. Next thing on the diffusion here, we're going to use the spread to max, and then we're going to mess with our level here. We'll try it maxed and see what it sounds like. So this is supposed to sound trippy and slightly weird. That's the whole point, because we're trying to create sort of like a little wacky additional sound for the leads. So if we bring our feedback level up a little bit, say about 40%, and then our sample rate will bring down slightly. So if we play just this sound alone, this is what you get. So quite glitchy, quite strange. We're also going to add in a reverb too. And we're going to bring our low cut nice and up to about 1000 Hertz. Our bass is going to come right down. Our low cut, we can keep it about 800 Hertz. Our size will max out. And we'll bring our, we can leave our dry where it is. We'll bring our wet, we can keep our wet at 50%, and the decay will go up to about 3 seconds, and have a listen. Okay, we also need to push our damp and our high cut all the way up. So if we play that back now, and we can also bring the volume up a little bit too. Put the sounds together. Okay, now it's time to fatten up this lead. What we're going to do is we're going to insert yet again another silent one. Let's bring that one on up. And our next preset to load is menu, preset load. And we're going to pick the next sound, which is actually our mid. So this is an interesting one here. So we're going to open this one up. That sounds a bit like this. You notice that it sounds like it has no low end, not super high end, kind of flat. And what we're going to do is we're going to create sort of a contrasting mid bass or mid to go with this lead. So the notes should not be the same as any of the lead. And we're just trying to create sort of like a harmony, more or less, sort of a low level harmony to blend with the rest of the leads. So I'm going to have a play here and see what I can find out. And when I think I have something, I'll come right back to you guys. Alright guys, I think I've come up with something here. So let's have a little listen to what I managed to create. So if we put that together with the other leads, it'll sound quite dry for start, and then we're going to really fatten the sound up. Okay, so we add this one to its own channel because it's going to have its own effects on it, and we're going to mess with that one straight away. So we'll load that into, insert 13 in there, and we're just going to solo this by right-clicking on this green button here. And we're going to bring up, first of all, a parametric EQ2. And we're just going to right-click on the number 1, go to Type, High Pass, and then right-click on the number 1 and go Order Steep 8 to create a nice high-pass shelf. So that sort of does this. And we're just going to cut out a little bit of the muddy lows that might still be hanging around. So we can bring the 1 to about the 200 Hertz range, as it says right here, with that same preset. And then with the number 2, we're going to go to about 100 Hertz and just drop it right down. We might bring this number 1 back a little bit to say 150 Hertz. And then we're going to push up our number 3 to create a nice easy low shelf here. So that's at about 100 Hertz and about 40%. Okay, the next thing we're going to do with this sound, we're going to bring the volume down, say to about 80%. So having a listen, maybe a little bit more, 70%. And then we're going to stereo this. So with the stereo shaper, same preset again. Oh, we don't want to click on that. Presets and stereoize too. So that sounds like this now. Okay, now we're going to add some heavy reverb to this one. So we're going to go to Fruity Reverb 2 and just follow what I'm doing here. High cut all the way up, damp all the way up. Decay, we're going to set at about 3 seconds. Low cut can come up to 500 Hertz. 400 Hertz, I think. Bass, we're just going to drop that down to say about 50%. Wet, we can keep it 50% for now, and we're just going to mess around from here. I might just keep that low cut in, and we'll keep that bass in as well. So just right click, reset that, right click, reset the low cut. Should bring the low cut right off. And our damp and high cuts we can bring down slightly. And now our wet. So our damp sitting at about 19 kilohertz, and our high cuts about the same. Now we're going to bring our wet up to say about 70-80%. Let's go 90. Let's just do it 400. Reset, right click reset. And we'll bring our volume down a little bit. Now all together. Let's bring that volume up a little bit again. Okay, so we're starting to formulate our sound slowly. Next thing we're going to do is our bass. So we're going to insert yet again another silent one. And this time we are going to load up the bass preset. There's a few different presets here. Menu, preset, load. And when that comes up, we're going to select, for starters, we will do, let's see, our sub. So we'll bring up the Future Bounce sub, open that up, and that sounds like this. It's a great sub to use for any of your tracks, so make sure you save this one down for later use. We're going to link that to a controller straight away, because that will definitely be used in mid mono stereo separation. We want to keep it right central, because that's our sub. You want to try to always keep your sub bass as central as possible. Otherwise, you can create some problems with your mix later on. Okay, so we're going to our silence, and we're going to create our bass sounds. So it'll be very similar to what our mid is, but our mid is probably running at a 7th. So we'll have a little play and see what bass notes we can come up with. But I think I might just copy and paste my mids in, and then I'm going to drop it to a 7th, which is a little bit lower, so that we've got sort of a nice blend between the two. But we'll have a little listen and see what we can pick up. I'm just going to solo my sub here. So we're going to go to the mixer and right-click solo. Okay, so that sounds pretty cool, and we're going to now adjust our bass to make it nice and full. So I'll bring our volume down until we're, at a 12 decibel, negative 12 decibel readings. Maybe just peaking over. And on slot 1, we're going to add a Fruity Parametric EQ2. You might need to have your bassy type of headphones on to catch this low end bit better. Through any laptop speaker or anything, you might not have the same result. So we're going to push our lows a little bit, not too much. So basically just do what I did here. You get your number 1, you right click, type, go to low shelf, just low shelf, and just go order steep 8 basically, and just drag it right to the back corner. And then a number 2 at about 20 to 30 hertz, we're pushing up maybe 0.5 dB. At 60 hertz, we're up at 2 decibels, and then at 140 hertz, we're at about 1.5 decibels. Next thing we do is we're going to right-click on the number 7. We're going to go order, steep 8, and then we're going to right-click, go type, and then go low pass. And then we can control our low pass on this. So this does this. So we do want a little bit of bounce from the sub bass. We don't want it to be completely cut so that it's only those really low tones. We want to give you a little bit of mids and maybe just a scratch of the highs, just because it adds to a little bit of crispiness for that central sound, and it completes like a full circle more or less. So we'll go from here. The difference is quite subtle. So if we listen carefully, very, very carefully, this is without, and then with. So very, very subtle difference there, but it's quite important when it comes to the overall sound. So if we put everything together now, let's not forget to drop that volume down a little bit as well. One thing I might do is just go back into my EQ, and I'm just going to drop these volume levels down a little bit, because I think we're pushing our low end a little bit too much. So about 0.8 dB on the number 4, about 1 decibel on the number 3, and then just a flat 0 for the number 2 over there. And we'll listen again. Bring the volume of the bass up a little bit. And a little trick that I like to do is to solo out my sub, go to slot 2, add yourself a fruity limiter, and we're going to go ahead and chop the top off this bass. Just a little bit here. See how we're creating little cuts on the top of the bass here? Keep it sealing down a little bit more, maybe like negative 0.8, it says it up top here. And we're going to increase our compression's attack slightly. So to about 2.74 milliseconds in a release, we can go up to about 92 milliseconds. And we'll play that back. So the difference here is that we're only creating sort of a flat cut here, which is quite nice. We actually might bring that attack back a little bit. So essentially we're creating a nice little slice across the top there. So now you see our volume levels just peaking over 12. All together. Okay, next thing we want to do is add a layer for our bass. We're going to go and insert, you guessed it, another silent one. And we're going to load up the next preset, menu preset load, and then we're going to select this time as our bass 7th, which is our second layer for our bass line. So I'll bring that one up, and that sounds a bit like this. but we're going to create a 7th out of this one. So we'll go ahead and add this one to its own preset over here, channel over here, insert 15, Control L to lock that in. And we're just going to solo this and the bass, sub bass together. And the first thing we're going to do is copy the bass line, paste it above in the other channel, and we're going to go Control A to select everything, and we're going to go up 7 notes. So you can just count the notches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 brings you to D5, which sounds like this. Sounds very strange to starters. Now we're going to go up to D6, going a whole octave higher. So you notice that down in D5 it sounds completely awkward. But if we go an octave higher, the blend is perfect. But we're going to fatten this up by messing with our layer, because we've got our sub sorted. So we're going to go back to our layer, which is the sound that sounds just like this. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add in our parametric EQ2, and we're going to take a bit of this low end out so it doesn't conflict with our sub bass. Right click on the number 1, type, high pass, right click again on number 1, order, steep 8, and we're going to just take a bit of this low end out. So we're at about 150 hertz, or say 140 hertz with the number 1, and then we're going to grab a number 2 and go to about negative 2.6 on 100 hertz. So with, without, perfect. And we're just going to grab our number 7 and drop that in the corner. You can see the difference there. Next things next on the list, stereo shaper, and we are going to go to presets, stereos 2. Next things we're going to do, bring down the volume. Put this up to about -9, and we're going to take the tops off with a limiter. So slot 3, fruity limiter, and just watch the ceiling here. Okay, so you can see in the sound that it's got a little clipping noise, which is that little spike. That's not super important for our bass lines. They don't have to be quite as punchy or clippy, like there's a percussion on it, sort of. So we can take this line down, so we're just chopping that off. And we're going to go bring our attack down slightly to 1.6 or 1.59, and our release up a little bit, just to 90 milliseconds, and we'll play that back. We might just bring our attack back a little bit more to 1 millisecond, and we'll increase our release again to about 110. So you can see we're taking a nice chopping line off the top here. You'll also notice the sound is sitting below -12 decibels, so we can actually push the volume up a little bit more. So you notice the sound is actually louder, but its properties are lower in decibel value. Let's put all these together and see how far we've got. So we're really starting to bring this sound together, but I think we need to fill out that bass line or give something a little bit more width. So the next thing we're going to do, we're just going to solo our bass lines, and we're going to bring in, yet again, another silent 1, insert silent 1, and we're going to load up a growl bass. This one is something that I have put together recently. So this sounds like this currently. Not exciting, quite boring. I'm going to copy in our sub bass line, not our 7th bass line, and we're going to paste that in the top one. So if we link this to its own channel, we're going to put that in insert 16, Control L, and we'll just solo that one to have a little listen for starters. Not so exciting yet. It's not quite a growl bass, and this is where the vocodex comes in. So in the download pack, you will have a folder which is called vocodex, and it's got the preset for vocodex in there. Once you have that one up, you of course want to load that preset in, and this is the difference. So without this preset, it sounds like this, and then with it, so completely different, completely different. As soon as we bring in that vocodex, we do go to our slot 2 and add in a fruity EQ2, because we want to take out some of that low end. So we're going to go to right click on number 1, we're going to go type, high pass, right click again, order, steep 8. So if we cut out some of this low end, let's see how far we go. I'm looking at about 100 to 120 hertz. We'll have a play and see what we think would sound best so we don't conflict with our sub bass, and we also have a bit of a blend with our seventh as well. I'm thinking 120 hertz for our number 1, and then number 2 we're going to bring to about, I'd say, 50 hertz and about -5. I bring it out here so I create a bit more of a gradual swoop. Have a listen again. So without, and then with, and now we want to stereoize this. So of course, Fruity Stereo Shaper, and we're going to drop in that stereoize 2 preset. Have a listen again. So that's nice and fat. Now we're going to bring our volumes down. Now if we put our 3 basses together, let's bring our growl bass down volume a little bit more. So you can tell the difference between before, which is without, and with. It's way, way fatter. So put all of our sounds together now, have a listen. I'm going to bring my delay effects down a little bit. It's a little bit too loud. So we'll go to about 60%. And we're also going to go on to our final portion for our lead design, actually, is our white noise. So if we go into our silence, I'm going to drop it on the top here, insert silence 1, and just load up my white noise preset. Very, very basic. It's just more or less the cutoff time that's been messed with mostly. And we want to load up, of course, future bounce white noise. Bring that one in. Okay, so this one is pretty simple, white noise. And we're going to load that into one of our inserts, insert 17. Bam, drop it in. And first things first, bring the volume down because it's super loud. And we'll also just solo this as well. And we want to copy the lead sound together. So Control C, and we'll just go up to the top here. Control V that in. If you want to adjust the position of any of your plugins in line, press the Alt key while the one you want is highlighted. Hold it down, and then press your arrow downward to move that particular plugin in order. So this way I have all of my leads in one place and all of my basses and mids in the next place, which is quite handy. So let's have a listen to our white noise. Obviously sounds quite flat, not quite as crispy. Slot 1, we're going to load in our Fruity Parametric EQ2. We're going to go to our number 1, right click, type, high pass, right click, order, steep 8. And we're going to take out some of our low end. So I'm going to go all the way up to about 400 hertz. I'm also going to drag a number 2, let's say to about 200 hertz or so. We'll have a little play. Okay, we're going to bring a number 1 back to about 300 hertz, and a number 2 back to about 150. So I've got a little bit of mid going on here, but we want a super crispy high, but we're going to go to right click on number 7, order steep 8, drag it right to the corner, and we're going to mess with the number 6. So we'll push the number 6 all the way to the edge, 20,000 kilohertz, sorry, 20,000 hertz or 20 kilohertz. Bring it up to about 8 decibels, and then on this adjustment here, this is your tension for that particular one. So if you push it all the way up, it does a nice swoop, and all the way down, it's basically a reverse. But I like to keep a nice tight swoop for my highs on this one. Looks like I'm sitting at about 25% tension. So without, with, completely different. I'm going to push that 6 up a little bit, and we'll also grab a number 5 to about, say, 11,000 hertz, and we'll just push it a little, 10,000 hertz, and we'll just push it up a little bit. So that's that. Let's have a look. About 1.8 decibels. So all together. So repeating that, sounds better. We're going to go to our slot 2, and we are actually going to stereo this also. So Fruity Stereo Shaper, because this is basically a fattener for our leads. So stereoize 2, drop that one in, and let's have a listen back with all of our lead sounds. So 1, 2, 3. Oh, one more. That's the mid sound there, but you get the point. Bring our volume down on that white noise. Might take out a little bit more of the mids on this white noise. We'll just grab our number 1 and we'll drag it up to about 400 hertz. And we'll keep our volume for this white noise at about -15, but we'll actually push it up a little bit. And then we'll get our slot 3, and we'll go to a fruity limiter, and we'll basically do the same as we did before. So dropping the attack time slightly, increasing the release time slightly, and then just bringing our ceiling down a little bit. And now if we look at our decibel reading, we're sitting firmly below -15, so we can push it up a tiny bit. So now if we put everything together, so the only difference we're going to make with any of these sounds going forward is basically just the volume levels. Now the adjustment of volume levels is super important. By keeping all of them nice and low in regards to the decibel rating, we avoid any of the other sounds jumping over each other or conflicting or creating any problems. They sort of just blend. So the importance now is to try and figure out what sounds you want to be more prominent and what sounds you want to be more or less prominent. So instead of boosting the shit out of one volume, just bring the volume down a little bit of the other ones until we've adjusted it. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to jump straight into the drums, basically. Quite simple for this track, and it is in the sample pack. If you just go into your Finder, you should be able to find it there. If you don't know how to put your folders in here, go to Options, File Settings, click on this folder here. Find my tutorial folder that you've downloaded and extracted, and then once that's selected, just like this one here, you will see it appear in the left browser window here. Open that up, go to samples, and the first thing we'll do is we'll go for the kick Jarno, which I've actually already set up in a 4-beat. If you have your own kicks, you can do that. Just create a nice 4x4 play, and then for the snare, same idea, already prepared for you. So let's go ahead and place this one on a number 5 to give us a bit of intro space. Usually if I'm making a track, I'll start my drop about here so that when it comes to automations, I can do all my intros a little bit easier. So first things first, get your kick, and we're going to paste that across. Let's have a look. We'll go to start down by track 3, and we'll paste that across 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1 gap, and then the same thing again. And then for our snare, we're going to do all the way through. Okay. So that's pretty straightforward. They sound very, very normal. So the snares on this one has been kept sort of in mono so that you can hear that one outside of the lead sounds. And we're going to add each of these to their own respective channels as well. So we'll highlight this here, go to our mixer. I'm going to go to Insert 1 and Control L to lock that in. And then a snare as well, Control L right after each other. And the volume on these is pretty moderate for starters, but we can play from here. These have already been pre-EQ'd and pre-boosted, so no need to worry about that. Feel free to use them in any of your tracks. I use them in most of mine. Next thing for me is we will drop in, we'll do our lead sound. So in our patterns, of course, we have pattern 1. We're going to paste that through and through. We're going to create some variants at the end of the second patterns later on, but for now we'll leave it as is. The first thing we're going to do here is our sidechain. Now, I do my sidechains with volume because I like to control each curvature of my sidechain. So if you zoom right in, we only want to get 1 beat length. This is 1 beat. This is 4. 4 beats to make a bar, or 1 beat length. So make sure that's highlighted. Any section you highlight when you create an automation clip, it'll create an automation clip just for that area. So this part's a little bit tedious, but it's part of it. We're going to go into a mixer. Now, each of these channels all the way through need to have a fruity balance added to them. So you can do that as you go through earlier, but I like to do it all in one go. So I go to my silent 1, and I go to about slot 8. So if I add any more effects here, I am completely cutting it out with the sidechain here. So we'll go to slot 8, and we're going to add in a fruity balance. And we're going to right-click on our volume knob, create automation clip. The first one you do is create automation clip. Then we go to our next mixer, and we're going to go to slot 8, add in a fruity balance, and this one here we're going to right click on the volume knob here, link to controller, and we're going to select an internal controller as balance silent 1 volume 2. Bam. If this is highlighted, make sure you turn that off. That's very, very important. Otherwise you will be blocking each one out and only controlling one channel at a time. We need to make sure that is off, otherwise that will cause you problems. So this button is not highlighted, it's off. It's okay if it's in red, that's okay, but make sure that is off. Accept. And now whatever that automation clip does, it'll do for both of these channels. And of course, we're going to do the same through and through. So just the same with each of the channels, fruity balance, link to controller, and then balance, and then accept, and then we close off those. So I'm going to do this for the rest of them, and I'm going to come right back. All right, we got there. We've got all of them now linked to the one automation clip. So basically, by doing that, we have linked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sounds are going to be controlled by this one automation clip. And that's beautiful because then we only need to paste one thing. I like to give myself a little bit more size here, so I'm going to go to my change clip size. I'm just going to scroll up to whatever height I feel comfortable, and I'm also going to boost the width a little bit by scrolling up, just so I can customize here. So this is quite important because the sidechain creates the bounce for the track. First thing I do is I right-click to add an automation point on the quarter beat, and I create a tension chain all the way to 100%, which is downward. Then I grab this point. Once I have it, I press the Alt key, and now I can freely move this whatever way I want. I suggest before you do that, you deselect the slide option, just to make it a little bit smoother for you, and it also means now, when I move this clip around, I don't move all the other points. Now the first thing I'm going to do once I grab this is to go about halfway in between the first quarter beat, so 1/8, and make sure that sweeps all the way down. And then I'm going to go to my tension here, and I'm going to make that probably about, I'd say 60%. You can try 50 to start, and we'll mess around from there. The reason this swoop happens is that when the kick hits, we don't want a clicking sound that sometimes happen when you have sounds abruptly drop volume, is that there's like a click. And to avoid that, we're creating this swoop. You can also create a fade off 50% here and start at 50% to make it even smoother again. But for this one, I think we're just going to keep it like so. So what we're going to do is we're going to paste this particular automation clip across the entire project. The only places we're going to get rid of it is the last bar and also this bar in the middle. So that gets rid of it there. And if we listen back to our patterns, we can take our kicks and claps away. We get this. So there is still a click, but that's when the kick will be hitting. So it almost adds to the kick by almost creating a perk in some ways. So we put our kick and our claps together. This is what we have so far. I think we'll bring that tension up to maybe about 65%, and then we're also going to zoom right in as well, and we're going to adjust the starting point. So once we click that, then we hit the Alt key, and now when we adjust it, we probably want to bring it to halfway, and then just a touch more from halfway. Have a listen back. Pretty straightforward, and it's sounding quite nice. We're getting somewhere. But it doesn't sound full, and this is where the professionalism comes in. This is a very, very important tactic when it comes to producing music. You get to this point, you're like, okay, it sounds good, but it's missing something. So of course, you can have crashes and snares and things like that, but there's one small piece that people don't do or avoid doing when they're beginning producing, and it's atmosphere. If you go into my samples here, you'll find a couple things. You'll find a vocal bed, and you'll also find Atmos wind, which is a wind instrument. Basically, that's how I pictured it. First thing we'll do is grab the vocal bed, which sounds like this, okay? Make sure that we paste that in across the whole way, and it's already sidechained for you so you don't have to worry about it. If we play the sound back with and without, well, first of all, we'll add this to a channel, so we'll highlight that, go to our mixer channels, and we'll just give it a bit of space, paste it about insert 25. I like to group my sounds with like leads, basses, main elements, crashes, and like atmosphere and things like that are in a different section. So once that's in, you can see it's quite a low volume, but it's sidechained to do with the other sounds. So if we take it away, this is what it sounds like without. And now if we add it in, it's very subtle hiding in the background there, but you can tell the difference. It sounds a little bit more full already, and all I've done is added a very low volume vocal bed, which is just a single note in key of the track that plays the whole way through and sidechains accordingly. So you can use that for your own tracks if you like. You might just have to pitch it up and down depending on where you're sitting at. The next is the wind one here, which sounds like this, which sounds interesting as well. But that goes at the start of both of the parts that come in. So we're also going to add that to its own mixer channel. And again, this is like an atmospheric effect which adds to the drop or to the punch of the drop. Gives it more atmosphere again. So play it now. We will bring the volume down a little bit on that one, maybe to about 90, probably about 90%. Let's go 85. You'll also notice on this wind one here, it's not sidechained. Let's change that. Slot 1, we'll drop in a fruity balance. Actually, we'll push that down. So if you use your mouse wheel, you can scroll this one to a different location on your mixer. Right click on your volume, link to controller, as per usual, balance, accept, and let's listen back. Now it's sidechained. Let's put everything together. And we'll bring the volume back up to like 90%. So you notice it not so much until you take it away. So without, and then with, little piece, but makes a big difference when it comes to the overall fullness of the track. The next piece is the downlifter and the crash. For you guys, I've already sidechained them, and the crash has already been affected for you as well. So you can use any of these for your own tracks. Absolutely go for it. These are some beautiful presets to use. So I'm going to drop those into each individual channel as well, so we can monitor their volume and adjust their volume accordingly. Drop that in, and this is what we have. Okay, we need to bring the crash, some of the volumes down a little bit. You notice the crash is quite loud. So bring it down a wee bit, say about 90%. And the downlifter also has to come down to about 85%. Let's have a little listen to just the two crashes together. Okay, it's sounding a little bit better. So this downlifter is focused in mono, and that's to fill out with the other white noise sound. Kind of creates a full circle. So all together again. So I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, okay, it sounds good, but it's not quite as punchy with the leads as I want. So we can go back to our main leads. And now we can decide sort of, okay, what do we actually want to do with these? Let's have a little listen. There's not a lot going on with these ones. We can bring that up a little bit. Delay seems okay for me. This is where I think we might change something. So this is our basic tone leads. We go into our playlist and we find our pattern. And the sound that we've got here is coming off the first two sounds here. And this one. But I think I want something to be pushed up. So I'm going to go into this first one here, and I'm actually going to bring this up an entire octave. So it sounds like this. So when it blends with the other lead, just to give it a bit more spice. And if we add everything back in, best to just right-click solo, and brings everything back up. With the other leads now. And we'll bring our volume up. And now we're going to do a limiter trick. So we're going to solo this one in, go to slot 2, add in our fruity limiter. We're actually going to put this limiter after the balance because there is a pop or a adjustment of volume that is within that. So we'll go again. So you can sort of see some of the notes that are a lot louder than others. Tack down, looking a bit like that. Okay, now our volume's sitting, as you can see, just on -12. Next sound. There's no reverb on any of these. Let's change that. I think I want to add reverb to our distortion sound. We're going to go to slot 2, we'll add our fruity reverb 2. And just follow what I'm doing here. Low cut, we'll go to about 500 Hertz. High cut, we can go up to about 18 kilohertz. Damp the same, 18 kilohertz. Wet can come down to about 35%, and a decay time can sit at about 2. We're also going to select this tempo option, and we're going to create a 1 of the delay for set to 1 on that one there. Now we've got a little bit more of a full sound. And we're also going to put a limiter on this channel too with the distortion sounds. Okay, now all together with our leads. And we're also going to add an EQ to this distortion one here. We're going to do distortion? Yeah, I think so. Slot 3, Fruity Parametric EQ2. We're going to right click on a number 1, go order, steep 8, right click, type, high pass, drag that up. Just follow what I'm doing here. I'm just making small adjustments, taking a bit of the lows and adding to my highs as well. We're also going to do an order, steep 8 on a number 7 here. I'm going to bring up the 6 to create a bit more of a high, and you can listen carefully to the changes that are being made. So without, bit dull, and then with, quite bright, quite punchy. We do like that. So together with the delay and the other lead. And now if we bring in all the other elements, you can already tell that it sounds way more full. So let's go ahead and listen to what we have so far. Okay, so now we need to make the change. We have 4 of the same pattern going all the way through. That's not so exciting. So on this pattern here, we're going to go to the top left corner, select that, and go make unique. We're then going to delete the second one here, and we're going to paste in that number 2 on their second section. So on the second one, what we're going to do is just click on it, and we're going to go to the pattern, and we're going to make a couple changes. What I like to do when I do this is just solo one of the lead channels so that we can work on one pattern alone. I know that these 2 are linked to the same channel, so I'm just going to take one of them off. I think I'll work with the other one. So we sort of want to create a bit of tension building back into the same pattern again. So I'm going to cancel that one completely and have a little play with the end of this and see what I can come up with. Bear with me for a second. Okay, I think I have something. So at the end, it's going to make a bit of a glitch. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so we're going to make a similar adjustment to all of the other clips as well. What I'd recommend to do is press the Control key down and just drag a box around anything you want to copy over multiple places. And then we're going to go ahead and bring in on all of the other patterns the same idea. So basically what we're doing is we're cutting out this particular part and we're pasting in this one. Of course, we want to put this up an octave for that particular one. And we're also going to paste that through all of the other lead patterns as well, so that now if we put them all together, the leads only, so let's see if that fits with all of the other basses and whatnot. So we're also going to have to do the basses as well. So let's go ahead and solo those. Okay, so basically pretty easy for the basses here. We're just going to cut through. Cool, so let's do the same for the rest of the other basses as well. Pretty straightforward. We're just adding a glitch to each of this section. And we're also going to focus that on the other layers too. Let's go ahead and do the same here. So we're just creating a glitch. Basically, on each quarter beat, we'll drop them in, and we'll do the same again on the sub bass. So once that comes through, boom, 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 they're all there now. Cool. So all together. So now if we play that back, we're also going to take out the second snare on here as well, which we can just do by dragging that backward. We do need to add some sort of fill or something to create tension in that area, and you'll also find in your sample packs that you have got literally fill. And we can just drop that in the top here and on each end if we like. I'll put one at the start just so we have a little bit of intro. Of course, let's add that into its own channel as well. And that will basically complete the majority of the sound. The only last piece we have to do, this one is a little bit interesting. It's a reverb usage, a usage of reverb. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to go onto any of the slots. Basically, we'll start with slot 2. You add yourself a reverb. And basically you do this. You boost your highs and your damps all the way up. You bring your decay to maybe about 10 seconds. The wet goes back to 100%. And your dry actually goes all the way down to 0. Actually, we'll probably put it at maybe 20%. What this is going to do, we'll bring the lower cut up to about 500 Hertz, is you'll see in a moment what this does. So this makes the sound ridiculous. If we play this back, so without, with, this will all make sense in a moment. Bring this reverb mix level down to 0, right click, go create automation clip. Now we're going to add a reverb with very similar properties to each of the lead channels and also the bass channels too. So you add a reverb 2 and we just go high cut all the way up, damp all the way up, wet to 100%, dry down to 20%, low cut up to about 500 Hertz, and you repeat this process for all of the other ones. My recommendation is to go to the top left corner, save preset as, make a name for it, drop it in and add it to each of these channels going through. Even including all the basses, including the white noise, all of these we're going to add this reverb. So let's go ahead and do that, all individual reverbs on each channel. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so now I've added a new reverb to each of the channels. And the next thing is really important. We go from the first one, and remember we have created a automation clip for that one. So we just turn it all the way down to 0 first, then right click and click create automation clip. Once you've created that, we're going to do the same with the balance. We're going to go through each of the channels under reverb on the mix level for that effect. We're going to right click, we're going to link to a controller, but make sure that you select reverb 2 mix level, click accept, and then repeat that process for the remainder of the reverbs on each of the individual mixer channels. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that all of them are linked together, if we go back into our main section here, if we max out this reverb mix level, because it's controlling all of the reverbs, it's going to sound ridiculous, which sounds like this. Which sounds absolutely strange, so we'll just delete that, and we're going to go to the section where the fill is. So this is quite important. We're going to zoom in, make sure that we're putting our marker on the number 12 here, for example, right where the fill starts. I'm going to add an automation point right there. And then I'm going to create a flat line up to 50%. Right click, so we're creating 50%. And then we're going to create a swoop of 100% tension all the way to finish this up. So if we listen now, what we've created with just the lead sounds, we've got this. See how it creates sort of pressure or more of like a fill? As an example, you can use it during sweep ups or anything like that as you're going along, because it adds sort of like a delay, like a suction chamber in some ways. So if we listen from here. So that's what that does, and I use that a lot in my songs during build-ups and things like that to create that nice effect. Now if we put everything back together, this is the final product. Okay, so that's basically the entire tutorial. If I was going to make any tweaks, I would adjust my reverbs to take out a little bit of the low end, just to avoid that sort of low end awkward reverb wobble, but we are running out of time. So if you wanted to do that, just go back through your reverbs and push up that low cut, and then I've just added a little bit at the end here, just so that there's a little fade off at the end of the track. So that concludes this tutorial, guys. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. If you have learned anything, please do drop a comment. Make sure you do subscribe because that does help me out a lot. You guys have been helping me out amazingly so far, and I appreciate all your support. But yeah, we've got more tutorials coming out. I'm going to try and keep it at once a month. If I don't make it, then make sure you let me know. Peace, guys. Thanks for tuning in.